think probably the best way to do this is let's just start with a brief overview of Peregrine Pharmaceuticals.
Okay. Peregrine Pharmaceuticals is a biotechnology company developing novel targeted therapies for the treatment of cancer and serious virus infections. Currently running a number of phase 2 clinical trials that have already yielded some very promising results. In addition, we operate a wholly owned subsidiary called Avid Bioservices that does contract manufacturing work both for Peregrine as well as for outside clients. And we're also operating a very large contract with the government to look at actually some of our compounds for the treatment of some biodefense type applications.
Let's jump into one of the first product, bavitoximab. It's a pretty novel mechanism of action. It's utilized both in oncology as well as infectious disease, as it targets a cell surface change that's common between both diseases, both in the existing vasculature of solid tumors as well as infected cells by envelope viruses. Can you explain that method or the mechanism of action, and then I guess specifically how phosphatidylserine works into that role?
Okay. Sure. It is actually quite an interesting target because phosphatidylserine it's a normal component of cellular membrane. So it's actually found throughout the human body in virtually every cell that's present. However, what makes it special is that it's actually very tightly sequestered inside of cells. So if you administer drugs like ours that bind to phosphatidylserine, they actually don't find any target available for binding and then just naturally clear the system.
Because that would be on the intracellular. In a normal state, it would be intracellular and not extra. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. So a normal individual with no infections or cancer, there's basically no available target for binding, even though the target is there. Now, what happens is cancer develops and outgrows its blood supply, or as cells become virally infected, it turns out that the mechanisms that keep PS inside of cells become disrupted. It then causes exposure in those specific disease sites, allowing us then to administer the drug. It will bind to the target, and then we'll have its anti-tumor or antiviral effects depending on the patient type.
Interesting. Let's talk about some of the trials that you're in. You're in 3 phase 2s for bavitoximab. I believe you actually just started a monotherapy as well recently. I believe that's phase 1 though. But let's talk about the 3 phase 2s. And just recently you've had some pretty impressive data that's come out.
Right. Yeah, we're currently running 3 phase 2 studies. One of them is combining bavitoximab with docetaxel for the treatment of advanced breast cancer. That trial is just completed enrollment of the entire 46 patient population. It was a 2-stage study, so we did get to take an interim look at the first set of patients. It was 15 patients, and determine how those patients were doing. And we were actually ecstatic about the results. We ended up with a 71% tumor response rate in the evaluable patients, which compares very, very favorably with historical data for the docetaxel alone. So really giving us a lot of excitement to see the rest of the data from the trial, but also to pursue this as a potential indication down the road. The other 2 studies are both combining with carboplatin and paclitaxel, another common chemotherapy regimen. One of those studies is a breast cancer study. In that study, again, same 2-stage design, we saw a 64% response rate in the first set of 15 patients. Again, comparing very nicely with historical data for the chemotherapy alone. So that study is ongoing. We've expanded it to the full 46 patient population. The third study is actually probably the one we're most excited about, and that's, again, the carboplatin and paclitaxel plus bavi in lung cancer, which there's clearly a high unmet medical need. In that study, again, 2-stage design, 21 and 28 patients is the 2 different phases. In the first 21 patients, we actually saw over a 50% response rate. If you look at the best current standard of care, it's about 50% response. It's around a 30% response rate. So again, very, very nice numbers, and we're extremely excited about it. And that study's now been expanded. Patient enrollment's ongoing, so we're obviously can't wait to see the rest of the data.
All 3 studies, I believe, went to expanded label, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we did that, because we weren't sure what we were going to get when we went into the studies. And so we wanted to have some futility points built in. And we actually very, very easily exceeded our expectations in the first part of all 3 studies, allowing us to expand.
Excellent. All right, let's talk about bavitoximab in viral infections. As again, we mentioned before that it has kind of a dual utility here.
Right, to see the rest of the data from the trial, but also to pursue this as a potential indication down the road.
All right, let's talk about bavitoximab in viral infections. As again, we mentioned before that it has kind of a dual utility here.
Right.
Typically, you've been looking mostly at HCV, but also HIV co-infected. Can you, again, just go over the mechanism as far as how phosphatidylserine will be translocated to the outside of an envelope virus, and then a little bit more light on how the trials are going?
Okay, sure. Yeah, it's exactly the same target. It just turns out that during viral infections, the virus enters the cell, sort of takes over the machinery of the cell to make more copies of itself. As it does that, it basically inadvertently starts to disrupt the mechanisms that keep PS inside of cells. So basically in every viral type we've looked at so far, you see this upregulation or exposure of our target on the virally infected cells. It's a similar concept to the cancer where we inject the antibody intravenously, it finds the target cell which is virally infected, and then again causes this shift in the immune system to actually destroy those cells and to protect the animal from the, or the person from the viral infection. But really the technology platform and Bavi in particular have much broader utility. In fact, that's what led to the contract with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency to study the potential of bavitoximab and a human antibody for the broad spectrum treatment of viral hemorrhagic fever, which while not common in the U.S. is a major concern for troops that have been deployed or from a biodefense standpoint. But again, one of the things I think that drew them to the program was this broad nature aspect, the ability not just to go after the virus types you can identify, but also as new viruses emerge and develop to have a drug that you potentially can apply in many different settings.
Which is what's so unique about this mechanism of action, as far as it wouldn't be very easy for any kind of virus to mutate against, the target that you're going for, as it comes from our own body. I don't know if you can comment more on how, that mechanism of action can be used with antivirals that target viral replication, or how it can be used in combo.
Right. I think it's one of the, whether you're talking about cancer or viral infections, this mechanism of action works extremely nicely with existing therapies. In the case of viral therapies, most of the successful viral therapies today go after the replication mechanisms of the virus, so they stop new copies from being made. But what they don't do very well is actually go after and kill those infected cells. So they basically force it into a dormancy period, but then as soon as you stop treatment, the virus may come back. In our case, we think that's a really nice natural combination. Shut down the genesis of new viral particles, but actually go ahead and kill off those infected cells. So, really, again, nice 1-2 punch for multiple indications.
Last but certainly not least, as you mentioned, you have a wholly owned subsidiary, Avid Bioservices, a CMO. It's a very interesting position to be in because, not only is this a revenue stream for Peregrine as you're going through drug development and trying to lower your cash burn, but the cost savings, which I think is something that often goes by the wayside for your own drug development candidates, is also a huge benefit to the company. So if you can go over some of the numbers, your revenues have been growing very well at Avid as you've actually increased. You've got a couple new bioreactors and you're getting larger. If you can go over some of the revenue that you've been putting forward, as well as even sometimes, in my opinion, a little bit more importantly, the cost savings to the company for your own trials.
Sure. Yeah, Avid has been a really nice asset to have, and it was formed out of existing capacity back in 2002. We were utilizing relatively little of our own capacity, so we thought, well, this could be a business where we can generate some additional revenue. And over the years, we've actually seen some very nice revenue growth. This past fiscal year, we had $13 million in outside revenue, which was a little over double last year's revenue. And again, this is all from third parties that are utilizing our facilities for their own products. And in fact, we actually make a commercial product, been inspected by the FDA quite a number of times, and done very well in those inspections. And as you said, one of the real benefits of this is that, number one, it's a business that is growable, and it's a growing business and one that does generate revenues. But probably equally important is the fact that it manufactures all of our clinical products, and for products in our pipeline, they do a lot of work for us. And in fact, last year, while we were doing $13 million in outside business, we did about another $10 million in work for Peregrine itself. Essentially, it's right at the point of becoming a really successful, standalone, profitable business. We obviously want to encourage them to grow the business while continuing to give us our clinical supplies, which are really the long-term value driver for the company. But again, really happy about the growth of the business.
Well, it really helps move your drug development pipeline along.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen, very much for joining me. If you want more information on Peregrine Pharmaceuticals, they trade on the NASDAQ under PPHM. More information can be found at OneMedPlace.com, as well as their website, peregrineinc.com.